slide, I guess. Today, I'm Suzann. I'm the software connect lead within IBM. Working in local government for about 5 years now. I'm working with Camden around what Hilary's going to be speaking to you today. Hilary is the head of ICT for business and partnering, and we'll go into the area of what Camden felt was a benefit for them and bringing in single view of citizen index, golden record, everybody have their own sort of terminologies and names of what they want from their council. And my colleague Sean Spillane, who's our software architect, will be talking a bit later after his presentation.
Okay, so I'll crack on. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Just making sure this is all working. I'm very happy actually while I'm talking if people do have the odd question or interjection, just to, I quite like a bit of interaction as I'm talking. So if you feel there's anything pressing as we're going through that you wanted to ask, then do. Obviously we'll have to try and keep to a bit of a time limit, but that quite often helps get things running a bit more interactively. So I'm here today really to talk to you about Camden's project, our master data management project, sort of why we did it, which I think for many of you will be quite obvious because you will have very many similar issues across local government. And then also I'm going to just be talking to you about some of the practicalities and some of the big issues that we had to overcome so that within a 3-month period we were able to get 16 data sets from some of our critical line of business systems into this residence index. And some of those issues, as I'm sure you'll probably be very well aware, were softer issues, not so much technical issues, but some of the issues around the governance and information sharing, and just some thoughts from me, retrospectively really, about what made a big difference and made it possible to do this project. Because I think at the outset, a lot of people said you won't be able to do it. We had people like Brent who'd already forged the way with the residence index approach, but still felt that on this scale it was going to be quite difficult to pull all of our personal information together into one system. So the obvious drivers, which I'm sure are the sorts of issues that you're all facing, huge savings out of the services. So far Camden's whittled away at individual services, but now we feel that the way forward really to make the next set of the next set of savings on our services is really around silo busting. We can't do it in individual services, we've got to do it joined up across Camden. And so the Camden plan really was all about the 360 degree view of the citizen, knowing all of our interactions with different residents, and also very much around preventive work with residents. So all of that really was one of the drivers, that without something that enabled us to link information across the council from different silos together about our people, there would be no way we'd be able to get the kind of intelligence we needed to move to the next phase in terms of sort of service design and service delivery to our customers. So that was the main driver really. And obviously huge structural changes. Early intervention being a very big theme now about preventive work with families, troubled and complex families. Is there something that we could have foreseen earlier that we could have done that would have prevented those families now absorbing multiple services and costing the council huge amounts of money? So those sorts of initiatives were all in everyone's minds when we started this project. On the other hand, the difficulties, the issues around data protection, compliance, the ICO, and can we actually share this information legally, and how much of it can we join up? So those were all the sorts of issues that we were grappling with. So you can see, I'll probably gloss over these a little bit because I think that these are so obvious to so many people. Multi-agency working now being a way forward in terms of making savings with health, other organisations. Intervene before things go wrong. Obviously, customer service transformation, instead of having multiple points of access, multiple services, we're now talking about consolidating our view of the citizen. And the other big one, which was around efficiency, which was really the business case, which was the money side of this, was all around fraud, and data quality and those sorts of areas. So it was really the fraud. It was the whole package of all of those areas that contributed to the business case in terms of actually being able to justify doing it. So we put together, what we're trying to do initially is obviously the integrated view of customers, which we've done. We're going to look at an integrated view of staff down the line and also businesses. Very much already enabling us to answer questions that we couldn't have previously answered. In terms of the residence index, if someone in our Camden's management team comes to us and says, "Can you tell us how many people are consuming multiple services across the council?" The answer is yes. In fact, the answer is yes to most questions in terms of this sort of can you tell us and can you find out new bits of information that we couldn't previously do. And the other area, which Sean will talk a bit more about, is that we will move eventually onto unstructured data search and using this as a foundation for it. So this is our business case before we started, and as I was saying, the money a lot of it is around fraud. Obvious things like single person council tax discount fraud, subletting and admissions fraud is another one. We've already made a lot of use of the system around admissions fraud, which is a huge issue in Camden, school admissions, people gaming the system to try to get into very high-performing local schools. This enables us to be much more proactive. It's on the front page of the Camden New Journal. Every time there's an admissions round, we're seeing it on the front page of our local press, are we doing enough to stop admissions fraud? So the fact that we can now say we are is a big step forward. Looking also obviously at data quality, because it's one of our programmes in Camden. It's called Right First Time. If you're collecting the wrong information at the beginning, duplicating records, it's costing a lot of money down the line. It's this kind of systems thinking approach, looking at all of the rework that we're having to do because we didn't get the right information in at the outset. This system, with a sort of workflow process, and that enables us to have some data stewards in each of the services to start cleaning all this up. And before that, it was very difficult to get something like data quality on anyone's agenda. We just didn't have any metrics about how bad it was, I suppose. The other obvious ones are around safeguarding. One of the things we can do is alert social workers if a new adult moves into the family home, into the household, which was one of the ABP factors that came about. We can search for missing children and children missing education, and we can, this was obviously, the basis of this was Investor Save, and all of those things that we wanted to use it for, we do, and in addition, we've found all sorts of additional uses for the residence index, which we hadn't thought of at the outset. So it has been a very successful project, really, and quite quickly implemented in Camden. So these are the sources we had feeding the index. One of the important things was, and I don't think I really realised how significant this was until after the event, but what we did was all of the people who were providing information, potentially providing information for our residence index, we got in a room as a sort of governance board, or at least representatives of them. And it would have been very, very problematic if we hadn't have done that, I think, because what we did was, if we'd gone out and bought the software and then started to address the issues of governance afterwards, I think we would have had a huge amount of resistance about people saying, okay, you can have the data. But because we engaged in at the beginning and really listened when they said that there were specific legal issues, say around parking or around data from housing benefits, and that we needed to treat those particular data sets differently and refine the role-based access around those data sets. I think if we hadn't really listened to those boards, I think we wouldn't have been able to take it to the next step. We would have had software, and we wouldn't have had anything in it. It would have been a very difficult situation to be in. So if I was going, that was one thing I would suggest: get people in the room. It's not a technical project, and I think when we've talked to private sector colleagues around these types of projects, that's come across loud and clear. People in banking have found it very difficult to move on because they've thought of this as being a technical project about putting, software in and getting data into it. It isn't really. It's an information sharing project and an engagement with stakeholder project so you know, that's one thing that I think we realised retrospectively enabled us to move forward very fast. When we had the software installed, we were able to just literally move and get it rolled out to the users. Next one. Sorry, the other thing that was very difficult but was quite important was we really wanted to have a children's index, and obviously that then meant there were another set of sensitivities around it, whether we were just going to have the adults information in Camden on our residents index, or whether we were going to include the children and see the whole household view. But by working with legal and with the children's services people, that feels like a very big win, because I know that some other councils have had a children's index. We felt quite a loss, I suppose, with not everyone did, but we felt there was potentially a loss with the National Children's Index contact point, you know, that we had been waiting on that, and when that was discontinued, we then didn't have a solution. And other councils obviously did have a children's index, but it felt very important that we did include that here, otherwise this would be a missed opportunity. But it did make it more complex. And you can see the sorts of things that came back from the business, which we listened to. They were very worried about having sensitive data, so we pared the list down. The other thing that's quite important, I think, is, you know, start somewhere. So, you know, it's not big data, a residence index. It's almost the opposite at the initial stages. It's the minimum amount of information that is going to be useful. Don't think about the maximum in terms of case data and tons of additional information. Those can be linked later, but just to get it up and running, you want a very minimal set that people feel relatively safe with. That's my view in any case. So people were very worried about sensitive data, so we went field by field and moved those sets of data out. If we didn't really see a business case for every field, we would exclude it at this stage. I mean, we've got around 170 fields in the end of sort of flags and indices and demographics, and one or two bits of sensitive data where it was clear that there was a very strong business case. But in general, no case information, and that made it much simpler as well. People were obviously very worried that members of staff around the whole of the council would be trawling the data for information, and we had to make it clear that the system we bought was so strong and audit and very, very refined and fine-tuned role-based access. That was very important to gain confidence. And then, was there a concern that residents would oppose us having joined up the data? So alongside this, a big piece of work was the privacy impact assessment, which is something obviously the ICO recommends. At that stage, I couldn't really find very many examples of any having been done in the country, but Newham had something, and we worked with that. And I found now that actually a privacy impact assessment, which is basically a risk assessment of the data sharing element, the information sharing element of the project, was almost the key unblocker. And so if anyone wants to see a version of that, or, you know, we've done a couple of them now in Camden, and I think it's a really useful tool. You know, it's daunting at the outset, but it's really useful to do. And people retrospectively again in Camden have said, this feels like a huge step forward, that we've managed to move onto a kind of risk-based way of thinking about information sharing, rather than is it legal or not, yes or no. And the answer, you know, that doesn't seem to be a very good way of having a dialogue with our legal services. It's much better if we talk about risk and mitigation, and we've managed to go much further, I think, by using those privacy impact assessments. And there was quite a lot of work around all of that governance, you know, fair processing notices, privacy notices on the website, and some stakeholder engagement by sending something out with our council tax bills. So, you know, there was that piece of work to be done at the same time. So implementation challenges. The first thing, we're lucky in Camden, and I don't know what the situation is in other councils, it wouldn't be quite the same, I wouldn't think, is that our IT service covers all of the applications. You know, we've got all the system administrators, all the technical people on one floor in the town hall. So, you know, to say, can we have some housing benefit data, please, and we need it next week. We were in the middle of a huge IT restructure at the time, so it could have got quite difficult, but, you know, walk across the floor, put a bit of pressure on, offer some help, and, you know, within a 2 to 3 week period, we were able to meet our sort of contractual deadlines of having 16 data sets in the right format. So that made a difference. I don't think it would be quite as easy for other people, but that meant that we had that, you know, the 3 months that we had contracted to get this up and running, we were able to stick with that time frame. The other thing that I think people thought in the outset was that we'd have to clean all our data before we put it into the master data management tool, which we didn't have to do. I mean, there's some cleaning we're sort of doing now, but the obvious advantage is it will match up dirty data. I mean, if it's completely wrong, obviously it won't match well, but it will take a lot of uncertainty around the formats of the information. The probabilistic matching within the system basically means that you can feel quite confident that the matches are right. And if it's not right, there'll be a rating and a score on it. So that was a big benefit, thinking, because if there was a lot of work up front around data cleaning, I think it would have been very difficult to have got it off the ground. That's a huge benefit, really, of using this tool, the probabilistic matching, rather than the algorithmic matching, I think, is the other option. Which is really about how many rules can you think up to match. This is a different way of doing it. We have had problems with some of our address data, though. If your systems aren't linked to the Land and Property Gazetteer, you will get multiple households that should actually be one. So you've got to work through that over time. The system itself has got a workflow element that sends tasks to data stewards to say, these look like they match, do they? And somebody's got to make a decision. So that's part of the project that we're rolling out now, which is another benefit, really. But over time, you can just improve data quality in all of your source systems. I think the last bit there is a bit technical, probably, about just automating regular data exports. That would be obvious to you. You need to refresh the data regularly, just because obviously the index will lose credibility if it seems to be out of date. That was a bit of a job to get all that automation done, but we've done that now.
Do you do that every evening?
It depends on the data set, how regularly you refresh it. Pretty obviously, because electoral registration, I think, they clean it up at certain time frames. You don't particularly want it between that. You might only want it every few months. So that each bit of data has got its own kind of cycle. Yeah, whereas the customer relationship management system, obviously every night. It wouldn't be relevant to do it less regularly. Have I talked through? So implementation challenges. I think one of the big ones has been the issue that is also brought to light is this issue about who owns the information, the information asset owners, and that there's a responsibility on information asset owners for data quality. And that's we've worked on a training program for some of our senior managers alongside this to get them to understand that it's their data. Prior to this project, I would say that the vast majority of business, senior business, the owners of the data, the people that run the services, would think that it was IT who owned the data. But we've managed to turn that around. I don't know what that's like in other councils, but it's quite difficult to get that message across, I think. But we are getting there with that. And just the general issue about trying to get hold of people who are data stewards, because this isn't a new job. We can't afford to get new people in to do this, so we've got to get volunteers who can incorporate this into their everyday work. And it's not an easy sell, but over time we've managed to build that up and get data quality more on the agenda than it was. And we're working with our information governance colleagues on data quality procedures and training across the piece. So it's all putting it all on the agenda a bit better. Is there anything? So early obvious things here. I've talked about school admissions. We've managed to take back a number of school places this year. Audit. I'm really delighted that they can respond to requests from the police really quickly. They would normally have been trawling through multiple systems, logging on to try and see if they knew anything about this particular case. Now they can do it in one go and quickly. Obvious cross-system reporting issues. So our, I think is it the next slide? Yeah, and housing subletting I've talked about. Identifying non-registered voters. You can read these yourselves, can't you? household view. We didn't have that in Camden previously, a view of a whole household rather than individuals. So that's very important for things like complex families work. Validating people's entitlement to services up front, so we can check our own data rather than going to people like Experian. We don't pay Experian, we start by checking the residence index. And obviously raising the data quality issues. And the employees find it beneficial.
They feel that they've got more information and data to their hand, easier to find and to look up information.
Well, one of the issues that we felt very strongly about was that we wanted to get a system that we could, roll out with minimal training. It had to be very, very usable. With security, the usability, and the matching, I suppose, were the three main issues in purchasing this particular tool. What happened in audit and various other teams was that we would just do a quick presentation in a team meeting. There would be some sort of floor walking type training, and we found that people would instantly, just in that training session, say, "Oh, I know I've got a case I need to use this for." So they were just straight off working on it. And the team in particular that's seen that benefit is MASH, the Multi-Agency Support Hub with the police, who get referrals about things like youth offending or safeguarding into their service, and sometimes the referrals don't have a phone number. Some of them need to be acted on really urgently, and they can then check on the residence index for the rest of the information they need, so that they can phone someone and say, "I need to come around now," or try and contact people. So it's just useful on day one for so many of our staff. This sort of safeguarding, we were initially thinking we would train children's social workers, maybe a few administrators, a couple of team leaders. We thought we might have 30 users, and when they saw it, they said we want all 200 social workers on the system. So we had to expand up the use of it quite quickly. So they're incorporating it into their day-to-day processes very quickly in terms of doing these initial checks, audit and social care. Multi-agency support hub, all sorts of people. It just works on day one as something that's useful for people.
So it's spreading now into other areas within the business, as you say, bringing in the single view of the employee now.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's our next step. We're probably in a similar situation where you may not be 100% sure how many people are working for your council, and that they all have agency people and contractors and all sorts of other pockets of data, and payroll and exchange, and all of those need to be matched up to get a master list, really. That's the aim. This was a question we were asked by our Camden management team. They had an away day around what they call Right First Time, and they wanted to start. We had some consultants in who said, "Can you give us any information about who's using which services?" And they said they'd never been able to get this information quickly from any council, because it would have involved manual matching of spreadsheets from multiple systems. But we were able to do that, 1 day's worth of work to turn around this kind of pyramid of need. And what they want to do is, rather than just working at the top level, they want to start looking at the middle level of people who are interacting with a number of services but haven't reached kind of crisis point. They want to try to direct our efforts into the middle section of the pyramid, so that we get that early intervention, rather than looking at the families who are already tipped into serious levels of stress and intervention required. So that was a good moment for the MDM, in terms of people arguing about what was the business case and the benefits, to be able to respond to that very quickly at request. So moving forward, we've talked about this a little bit already, haven't we? We want to. It's such a good person search screen, actually, the Master Data Management System Residence Index, in that you can put, wrong, incomplete data in. You can put in Stuart McDonald spelt in different ways and still get the result, but it actually helps in itself to stop all this duplication of records. So we want to try and integrate that into other applications as a search screen to find people, I suppose. Rather than people create a new person and duplicate all of the data, put that into the initial search screen. You can see what we're doing. We're data stewards, we need a few more of them. We're looking at developing some of our legacy systems and getting more systems linked around a property gazetteer. I think we thought they all were, but we found out through this that they aren't. And some of it is just about training people in taking information correctly at the front line. Data quality issues, we're trying to use this to continue to raise awareness, and looking at our other indexes on staff and business in the new year. I think we wanted to interact with business in a slightly different way. They've got a sort of Camden first policy whereby if we're commissioning services, I mean even buying office chairs, they want to try to make sure that they have a kind of list of Camden businesses who could respond to that. And at the moment we don't know who all of our businesses are really in that way. We can't interact with them strategically. And obviously more cross-council reporting in terms of the data warehouse. So is it true that children who are living in overcrowded conditions, is that having an impact on their attainment at school, for example? Or are families in rent arrears also, if we can identify families who have high levels of rent arrears and also children have low attendance at school, is that an indication of something going wrong? All of this needs a lot of work, as you might imagine, on the information governance side, about who's signing off that that's okay to start linking that data across. But that's our next step, really, into working through those kinds of questions, those the sorts of questions that people ask and weren't able to get answers to. We can get the answers. We just need to work through, is it okay to link all of these bits of information together? And that's kind of where we are, really. Yeah.
How do you handle the ongoing data quality effort? Presumably you need to keep the repositories fresh, so have you got a team of people that are dedicated to doing that, or is it spread amongst client services? Or?
It's delegated out to these people who are data stewards, who there's sort of, at the moment we've got one per system of our 16 main systems. I'm not saying that there probably are other areas of data quality that aren't in our residence index across the council that we're dealing with, but it's quite a good way, I think, of working through the issues and kind of learning how to address it and what works. So, the biggest priority probably is sorting out duplicates and matching records and working out whether two children are twins or are they actually one case. And that can be a factor in things like safeguarding, if you think you've got two records but it's actually one record, those sorts of things. So we've got these 16 data stewards who are working through anomalies that are thrown up by the matching across the whole 16 data sets, or the people who have moved out of the borough. Special educational needs save a lot of money by knowing urgently that a child who's we're paying for a very high residential placement for, something like that, for special educational needs. If they've moved out of the borough, the cost of that's no longer Camden's responsibility. But in some cases we've carried on paying, and it can be huge amounts of money. So that that sort of right first time thing as well is a big issue.
Are they working well together, the data stewards, or are they in silos, or how's that?
Well, we also, at the moment, the person who rolled out the training is acting as a sort of central data steward, because you're quite right, there are cross silo issues. So who's right? Who's got the right information can sometimes be a discussion point. So at the moment we're working with a central person to kind of liaise really and sort that out between them. But yes, it throws up all sorts of issues. I mean, just sorting it out in their own systems is a big task, I was honest with you, without even addressing the cross-system issues. Actually.
Hi, Hilary, thanks for that. Very interesting. Just wondering whether the issues of the things like the Edward Snowden revelations have any sort of kickback, either internally or externally. You could easily paint this as another aspect of the surveillance state, if you wish to.
You could do.
Is there any thinking around possibly citizen engagement in this process as part of the government structure, which is one of the things we're talking around at the national level? It's that sort of potential to kick back politically, which would be quite interesting. Doing Camden.
Yes, it is interesting, isn't it? I think you're right, actually. I actually do think that if you could possibly get together a panel to talk through some of this, I think it could move things forward faster as well. But one of the things that was useful for our residents index was that one of the sensitive bits of data that we wanted to put into the index was whether someone has a disability or not. So there were big reservations from services about whether we should do that, should we kind of aggregate that up. But we talked through with our customer services colleagues who have a panel, a stakeholder group, who have a range of disabilities, and they said they really do want the council to have a central record of this, and they don't want to, you know, keep phoning up and explaining over and over again, you know, the adjustments that they need to be made. So that was really helpful. You know, I think that's a sort of, I think that is the way forward. You know, I think that meant that on that one field we were able to say, you know, the stakeholders engaged in this proactively, and this is what they want. You know, this is what they want us to do. I think you're right. I think it would get over a lot of it. Quite difficult to know exactly how to get that up and running and who it would attract, because, isn't it? You know, it's got to be a balance, hasn't it? I mean, I think, you know, if you do these sorts of consultations, like contact point consultation in Camden, we had sort of 3 people came back saying they weren't happy with it. You sort of think that if people thought through it, a lot more people might not be happy with it. It's just that most people don't, do they? So the overall picture doesn't seem to be quite, you know what I mean? Those 3 responses don't actually reflect, you know, people being knowledgeable about it, do they?
A lot of the feedback we've been getting back from the health industry lately has been coming back. Public feedback has been, what do you mean you're not doing this already? There's a lot of people out there in public who think we've already got these organised records. It's surprising to tell them you haven't.
Is there a question at the back?
Yeah, I was going to ask, did you plan to integrate with health, or was that never on the agenda, or are you planning to integrate with health into the future?
We didn't have it on the agenda initially, because we thought we would have a heck of a job getting this up and running just within the council, and as soon as you start going across organisations, then you've got an even bigger set of information governance hoops to jump through, haven't you? However, what we're trying to do now is we are trying to now link up with public health. I think that's going to be our first step, is public health now being part of the council. That seems like a really good step forward, and also a lot of their work is preventive. So, you know, to work with them, I think initially we might use the residence index sort of behind the scenes to make linkages, but just report out to them anonymised data. I think that's probably how we'll work initially. We haven't linked it with health yet. In Camden, we've got our clinical commissioning group. I've got a single patient record system that they're getting up and running. It does feel like a very strategic potential link to link the 2 of those, but I think there'll be a huge amount of work to get through all the information governance around that. But in a couple of years, I think we might get there. So.
Hi, sort of two questions. One was, what was the cost of implementation, if you can talk us through that? And you also said that you implemented into what seems like an incredibly swift implementation, something like this. So I'm really interested in what that implementation looked like. Okay.
I don't know, am I allowed to talk overall costs? I think it depends on per council and numbers of data sets, but I mean, we're talking, I think the whole contract cost, including support and maintenance for the next 4 years, is something like 350,000, and it's not cheap, but we're seeing a return on investment straight away. That's the whole cost.
Compare that cost with what you've got back within the first 3 months from this 326% return on investment.
Have you been able to bank this, because you listed some savings at the start, have you been able to bank those savings against this project?
And we're having to bank some of them because the support and maintenance is being paid out of investor save. The ongoing support and maintenance costs, the IT aren't paying the revenue overhead of it. So yes, we are chasing down the business for their money at the moment, and they're
running away fast.
They're running away fast. But some of them are handing over. Some of them are. You can imagine, can't you? Us and finance have got a kind of pincer action. That is a very difficult issue, isn't it? Getting your business benefits out. Benefits realisation is quite a difficult thing. But yes, we are. Yeah. And there's not that many projects, I think, in Camden that we're very slick on that yet, so it's another first.
The 3-month implementation?
The 3 months implementation, I mean, I wasn't that involved in all the technical side, but, you know, it's servers, so virtual servers in our case, loading the software, getting the data sets. The data sets were the most complicated bit because every line of business system had to have queries written in scripts in some cases to get the data sets into, you know, kind of secure area for us to load up into the system. Loading into the system. Then there's fine-tuning of the matching, which you need to do with real people on the ground who will look at what the system matches and say that actually is right or not. And then it's tuned up. We then obviously setting up all the role-based security, but we've done all of that in advance because we had to do it for privacy impact assessment, who was going to be able to see what. You know, setting up the users, training them, sorting out the data stewards.
I'm assuming there's a project plan.
Yes, there is, yeah. Quite high level, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's quite a basic. I need to write that down.
There's a form on the page.
Yeah, could you write down what
on
it's
there,
doing to? Yeah.
if you want further information from Hilary and the reference, we can send you them for that form to go on the table. That'd be brilliant. I can collect them in at the end. Gentlemen, you've got a question?
Yeah, are the links between your 16 basic system and the index one way, the export only into the index, and then changes are made in the separate siloed
Yes,
system?
at the moment it is.
And so you've got a fair bit of work which presumably decreases as time goes on.
Yeah, we are manually cleaning data. Obviously, you've got the choice whether you want to just write back. And what we're going to do, I think, with our customer relationship management system, which is being upgraded at the moment, is to refresh the data from the index. The golden record from the index is going to be used to populate the customer relationship management data in one hit. So that's useful. But in turn, I just think I'm sure people will know this. If you're going to automatically update addresses or moves or other data in back-end systems, you need to do it with a certain amount of caution because you know there might be good reasons why that someone's got two addresses. You know, so what we wanted to do is work through it manually, and then if we found that in every situation housing benefits say someone's moved, then housing are happy to take that as the single point of truth and happy to take an automated update, then we'll put the integration in. But we actually followed Brent because Brent had an index and they worked through quite a lot of this. I mean, that was the other thing about the 3 months. Because we started from the point of view of Brent, we had a list of fields which we tweaked, quite a lot of things. We were able to sort of stand on their shoulders with this project and move a bit quicker because they'd done a lot of the groundwork. That helped. If we'd have been the first, it would have taken longer. The business index is going to take longer because we're going to be the first, so we've now got to work out what are in the fields, I suppose, that sort of thing. Okay. Sure.
Okay, we've done, when it comes to the mass data management and getting a single view, one of the big projects that we've done recently has been in Wales, in the National Health Service in Wales, and that's going through, when we first went in there, they had over 29 million different medical records with a population of 3 million, so something wrong there. Either they had a lot of people coming in, half of the UK were going into Wales to get treated for medical medicine coming out, or they had problems with their data. And over the initial first 3 months of the project, we were able to get those 29 million records down to 4 million records. So we now know we've got 1 million records too many, and we're working slowly through those. It's always almost like the old 80-20% rules. But for 20% of the effort, you can actually get 8% of your data clean and together, and then it's a lot more effort to drill down. Now, what we've been talking about here is structured data, so your normal records in a database. But what we're also working on with our Data Explorer is actually getting that whole view, so social media data, emails, all the traditional unstructured data that we can pull together and identifying people within that and aligning them up with the single view. So I don't want to do a sales pitch, it's going to be really quick, I'm just going to show you a couple of screens. So moving on, having been able to do the search and bring up the structured data, see where people got records, etc. We can also bring up and have a quick look at where you might not usually see. So have they sent any emails in? So a list of the emails, correspondence they've sent into the council, and you can break down which email addresses they've sent that to. You can go wild and say any council email address. So being able to identify the person, unstructured data, and the address all together. So guys, your workers can do one search and see what's happening. Have analytics on the side, so this is what they usually contact us about. So delving in, you can dive down on the email and see what the actual email was. Or somebody's come in and said, I've got a change in circumstances with my housing benefits. You can't always guarantee that's gone to the right email address. You're having a case review later on this, and I sent one in, actually find it. And then being able to look at do exactly the same. So not just a person, but start looking at the unstructured data around an address. So where is that address on the map? Are there any council CCTV cameras in the area? If it's in London, the answer is yes. I think there's more CCTV cameras in London than there are actual people. But being able to bring up all the details on an address, and it's taking it that next step further. So taking your structured data, matching it, having a single view of the person or a single view of the citizen, but then now adding in unstructured data as well. So that's pretty much it, to be honest. Unless you got any questions, or I mean, how many? Oh,
yeah. Can I just raise a point? It sounds quite intrusive. Is it meant to be?
To the citizen?
Yeah, I thought you said health records at the outset.
Oh, that was the NHS. So this is just for a council.
Okay.
But it's getting more and more.
Because when you say a complete view of a citizen, that sounds quite removed from a person. Because you also said person. Now, person is individual and privacy, etc. So citizen sounds sort of slightly removed from that, and it's just like. It does sound very Big Brotherish.
Is it Big Brotherish? It's all the information's there within an organisation. Now we're moving into the realms of multi-agencies.
Sure, but to collect somebody's social media information, which is I think what you said.
If they're tweeting about council services, they're obviously publishing that data for you to notice it. So you should be noticing it and logging it. Ideally, if somebody tweeted to Camden Council or hashtag Camden Council, in an ideal world, you want to open up a CRM record because somebody's not
I just thought you wanted to open
something.
a dialogue rather than the CRM record.
Well,
Maybe I'm wrong.
Because you have the problem of nobody in the council is going to have somebody monitoring Twitter and going to each individual account. So what you're looking more for is more sentiment analysis. Are people happy? Are the people happy? Are the people of Camden happy with the housing association?
All right.
Things
Sorry.
like that.
Any other questions?
You mentioned about you gathering information, the emails that are sent and received, etc. Are you recording, or can you see at a glance the actions that were taken from that? So if someone sent in a series of emails, you also need to be understood, you also need to know what was actually done, what was actioned.
Yes, so with this, no, we're not, unless somebody actually goes and looks. So they could bring up their CRM record and the emails, etc., and see if it's been actioned. But we're not automatically at the moment looking to check that the business process has been followed, because that would actually mean building a huge rules engine. No? Cool.
Well, we're under time, so we're picking up on time from previous slot.
So can I ask a quick question? So what as a citizen do I see of that data?
That would be up to the council. again, as a citizen, you may not see any of this data. It's maybe a council tool, and it will go through a rules engine. So depending on the job you have in the council, will depend on what data you actually see. So you will only see data that is...
I kind of work for the council, you know, is it an interface for the individual citizens?
No, this is council internal.
Yeah.
Well, thank you today. If there's any questions afterwards, please see the details on the cards that we've left out on the table. We're happy to respond. Hilary is also available